If you joined Atlassian as a designer 2 years ago, your design process would have looked something like this. You'll notice how the designer is constantly referring back to the Atlassian design website and creating all of their components from scratch as they go. We sped this clip up 50 times, and it still takes them 27 minutes to build a full design. And it's not a very difficult one to build. It's a fairly simple piece of work. If you joined Atlassian today, your design process would look like this. That's the same design, and that's not a typo. We found when we invested in design tooling at Atlassian, we got exponential returns on our designers. So much so that on average, what used to take 60 minutes without tools in Sketch now only takes us 21. And on top of that, we unlock a bunch of new workflows and new ways of designing so that the designs with our tools have better capabilities, are stronger and more resilient, and can factor in new updates to our components and our design libraries. I used to work at CodeBarrel on automation for Jira, and I've seen the state of ecosystem design. I'm really, really excited today to be giving that back and to be giving something back to the community that has been sort of lacking design in the past. And I'm really excited to help your teams bring design to the forefront so that we can make better apps together. So today I'm going to be talking first about the problem. Then I'm going to be talking about how the Atlassian Vendor Sketch Plugin solves that problem. And then finally, I'll be giving you some information on how to get it and where you can find it. So right now, I want to focus on how neglecting design is currently hurting your customers. So let's go for a quick refresher on the difference between ADG and Atlaskit, in case you're unfamiliar. My team at Atlassian, the design system team, makes both. ADG stands for the Atlassian Design Guidelines. It's a design system, which means it's a set of rules and processes to make designs that look and feel like they're uniquely belonging to Atlassian. Atlaskit, on the other hand, which the developers in the room are probably more familiar with, is more like a reference implementation of the ADG in React. So if I use those two terms a little bit interchangeably today, it's because anything that is in the ADG is often also in Atlaskit. But it's important to have a distinction between the two. However, working with the ADG can prove challenging because there's a lot of different rules that our designers have to keep in mind. This both makes designing quite difficult because our designers have to repeatedly refer to our resources, but it also makes hiring and onboarding a problem because it takes new designers a long time to get set up with our system, to understand how it works, and all of the little niche small pieces that they have to fit together to create the whole. So just to test the room quickly, can you put your hand up if your primary role on your team is a designer? It's not bad, but it sort of illustrates the point. When design is hard, it makes it harder for teams to invest and hire in getting designers onto their teams and to working with products. This also affects us on smaller scales. So how many people in the room, please put your hand up, if you build your designs while you code them instead of designing beforehand? Yeah, as I expected, a couple of very nervous hands there. It's quite a lot of you, and I've seen design work that way myself on Ecosystem. The issue with doing that is that, well, I like to think of design kind of like as forethought. It's about putting a bit of thought into the process before you build something so that your users benefit in the long run. So here's an example from a product that I may or may not have worked on in the past. And you can see there's a clear misalignment here between these two dropdowns. So not only is this sort of visually ugly, which I found is often hard to get developers to care about, but it also has bigger issues for your users. So in one of these dropdowns, the user can click on it and type in text to filter through the list, whereas in the other one, they can't. And if a user is expecting the dropdown to work one way, it's going to feel jarring when it doesn't. Any sort of problem that you have with a user experience like this is significantly multiplied when you have to deal with users that need accessibility features, because they might be familiar with ways of working or shortcuts that work with one component that don't work with another. Furthermore, you want your users to feel at home in your product. Design is fundamentally about building trust with your users, and that's especially important on Ecosystem. because your users are probably familiar and trusting Atlassian first, and then moving into third-party products and plugins and apps later. So a really, really easy hack to make sure that your users properly trust your designs is to use the components and the design system that they're familiar with. Whereas if you don't, you can see issues like the one above where these two date pickers have different formats and one of them has a time component, and accessible users might not be able to use one or the other. Finally, when we don't put forethought into our designs, we face bigger user experience issues. If you build your designs while you code them, you're going to see problems like you might accidentally use the wrong form field or the wrong component to enter in data that could have been better entered using something else. Or you might direct your users the wrong way. We saw all three of these problems happening on large scales internally at Atlassian. And the reason why they happen is because design is hard, which means developers and designers often skip parts of the process because it's just too cumbersome to work with. So we learned that investing in design tooling, which then makes design easier, ends up giving our designers superpowers, and it ends up giving them that 3x speed increase I showed you earlier. But furthermore, when design is easy enough, when you lower the barrier to entry enough, you can also get developers and managers and other team members in on the design process. So at Atlassian, we've made it easy enough with the Sketch plugin that developers and managers can drag and drop designs together and come up with a quick mock-up of the features that they would like then built and refined by a proper designer or by a developer later on in the process. So if you're a developer in the audience today, this talk is for you, and there's a lot to learn from it. So let's chat about the solution. I'm very, very excited today to be introducing to you all the Atlassian Vendor Sketch Plugin. We're going to be releasing this today, and I'll have details on it at the end of the presentation for you to follow. I want to reiterate, internally, we did a bunch of very rigorous research. We timed our designers building different designs and different components as they went, and we found that on average, a designer can cover the work of 3 using our tools. So today I'm going to be showing you a bunch of different features, and I'm going to be doing some short demos of what the Vendor Sketch plugin actually provides. So what's in it? We have templates. We have the vendor GUI pack. We have the symbol constructor. We have text styles. We have color styles. And finally, we have data suppliers. What's more, as we develop new updates internally that we push out to the internal teams at Atlassian, you will also be getting them at exactly the same time. So the Sketch plugin will be kept completely up to date as long as we continue updating it internally. Let's get started with templates. A template is the start of any design at Atlassian. I see them, you cannot walk 5 meters in our Sydney office without seeing one of our design templates pinned up on a wall with some interesting design on it. They are used by literally every designer. They provide an empty background that can sort of frame your design. And the benefit of doing this is that it makes it feel like your design has a context. It makes it feel like your design can exist within a product. And that makes it feel a little bit more like it can come to life. Templates are super useful as well if you're creating mock-ups. So I personally think you're very likely to be like the next superstar in your next feature sparring meeting if you bring in the design of the thing that you want to talk about, or if you at least bring in a visualization or a mock-up. And putting that in a template is the best way to make sure that your team understands what you're talking about. So to do this in Sketch, we're going to go to the File menu, and you're going to go to New from Template. And we've added a little menu item there called ADG, and we're going to be adding more templates in the future, but for now we have a web starter template. And if you click on that, it's going to go and open our web template. This provides some window Chrome, some browser Chrome, and also some basic product navigation and a product template you can work with, as well as our grid system. So today I'm going to be running through a common theme throughout all these exercises. We're going to be designing a sample app for Confluence. And well, I thought I'm an intern, and I'm a big proponent, therefore, of intern rights. And I'm honestly sick and tired of my manager asking me to handle Secret Santa every year. It's like a waste of my time. I don't need to go and figure out which person can't work with which other person, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to design a simple app that can handle a sort of Secret Santa thing inside of a Confluence page. This is the sort of thing you might want to build internally with Forge, for example. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to go and swap out the sidebar navigations. On the left, you'll see our global navigation. And all you have to do in Sketch is go to the symbol menu item in the inspector, and you can scroll down through our libraries, check the one that's ticked, which is ADG navigation, and then you can go and change that to a Confluence global nav. We'll do the same with the internal navigation there, which is a product navigation as well. So templates are totally new to ecosystem design, and we're really excited to see what you make with them. One thing that comes to me off the top of my mind is potentially putting your templates and your designs on the Atlassian marketplace to show them off to your users and to make them feel like they actually might install the product. So next up, I'm going to be talking about the Vendor GUI pack. We launched this quietly last October, and today we're going to be adding new features and new components, and also a way to keep all of those components and features up to date in the future. So to reiterate, the Vendor GUI pack contains 50+ pixel-perfect Atlaskit components for your designs. And what I mean by that is that if you hand your sketch file to a developer on your team, they're going to be able to one-to-one match up the props and the symbols in their design with stuff that's in Atlaskit. So it is automatically, basically ready to build. Furthermore, that also enables your developers, if they want to drag and drop pre-made components into designs and to make up their mockups, as I was sort of explaining earlier. Essentially, the upshot of this is that you don't need design school to become an Atlassian designer anymore. And that's really exciting. Next up is our components have infinite variability. So there's lots of variations within Atlaskit. You can make a button do whatever you want. You can put icons on the left or the right. You can change its color. And all of that is also available in Sketch, and it's super easy to customize any component you want to look like any other variation of that component using Sketch's overrides menu. Furthermore, all of our components resize responsively, exactly like you'd expect them to. So let's go through a demo now. In this screen, I've updated our Confluence page a little bit more to just to add a little bit more boilerplate. So I've put in a title, and I've put in an area where we're going to put our Secret Santa app down the bottom. So what we're going to do is we'll go to the left into the Insert menu in Sketch, and you'll see all of our libraries show up in the sidebar. As I mentioned, there's more than 50 of them, and there's quite a lot. We're going to scroll down to ADG Select. We're going to go into Selects. We're going to pick the multi-select, and we're going to get that at a 40 pixel height, which is the standard default height if you added a select through Atlaskit. We're going to drag that into the document, and we're going to pay careful attention to Atlassian's grid system, which is one of the things that's a little harder to get into Sketch. So we're going to bump that down 8 pixels according to our guidelines. Once we have this component in place, it's super easy to customize it. All you have to do is go into Sketch's override sidebar. So what we're going to do today is we're going to add a couple of names into this select list, because it's going to be, for example, something for selecting participants in your Secret Santa. So let's add Bob, and we'll add Jen as well. And then we'll give the component itself a label, something along the lines of participants or something like that. And as soon as you enter these things into the overrides panel, they'll immediately show up in the component like this. So it's very, very easy. You don't have to go and edit the text directly. You can work with these as if they are actual components with props and things that you can edit on them. It wouldn't be a select list without a drop-down menu open, so we're going to go and add one of those as well. We'll just scroll down here to ADG Select, go into Selects, go into Menu, and we're going to select an avatar menu. So that's one with a list of users that we might want to select from in our list. Again, we're going to follow the Atlaskit grid, and we're going to bump that down 4 pixels this time. I'm going to be going through a bit later in the talk under the data suppliers section on how you might want to fill in these users with actual user data from real instances. So for now, all we're going to do is just change the group headings, again by going into the sidebar and just changing this to something like managers. And we can change the second heading to something like engineers. Furthermore, as you can see in this panel, there's a lot of options to extend your components. You can change the text styles, you can change components out for other components, you can change colors. We're really working on making these components as variable as possible, and whatever's not in there now, we are working on building them out later so that you can have any sort of variation you'd like. So this dramatically speeds up the process of creating designs. So typically teams might have previously maintained sticker sheets for their designs, or they might have maintained, they might have been checking out the website, but now all of the information you need to get a component from Atlaskit into your Sketch designs is right in Sketch. Let's move on to the symbol palette next. As you saw earlier, there's a lot of stuff in the Vendor GUI pack. These menus are huge, and sometimes they can be really, really hard to navigate. We found that when our teams built experience with the Vendor Sketch plugin, they knew what they were looking for. They knew exactly the component, especially developers who are familiar with the component in Atlaskit, but they didn't know where to find it in Sketch. The second problem we faced is that a lot of our designers knew what the component they wanted looked like, but they had no idea what it was called. Like, is this a toggle, a draggy checkbox? I don't know. Finally, we found, especially with a lot of newer designers, they had no idea what some components were. An ADG flag doesn't really tell you what that component is going to look like or what it does. So to solve all of these problems, we took inspiration from a tool that a lot of you are probably familiar with, Visual Studio Code. VS Code has a thing called the command palette, which is a list of different options that you can run, like little commands you can run within VS Code. It's really easy to open up, filter down, and just, it dramatically speeds up the developer workflow for working with certain things. So to mirror from this, we built out the symbol palette. It's a searchable, scrollable visual list that I'll be showing you in a demo in a moment that allows you to find any component you want, no matter what context you're sort of asking that question in. I even know one dev internally who uses the symbol palette instead of the design website, and they don't even design. So to get it open, we're going to go to the Plugins menu. The menu item will be called the Atlassian Vendor Sketch Plugin when you install it, but this is the internal name for it. And we're going to select the symbol palette. Once it opens up, you can see very quickly that we have all of our components from the Vendor GUI pack already in there. We also have visual previews of them on the right-hand side. And it's kind of hard to see from this distance, but we have a small description under each component as well that'll tell you what the component does. That's sourced directly from the Atlassian design website. And we're keen to go and make this more expansive and more expressive in the future if we get enough adoption on it. So for our design right now, we're going to just try and look for a text area to add into the design. I don't know quite what that's called in Atlaskit though, or in the ADG. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go and scroll through the list and hunt for something that looks like it might be a text area. And sure enough, we start to find it here. All you have to do then is click on it and drag it in like any other symbol, and it's right in your design. You can then go and edit it however you'd like. But to make developers faster, you got to have a keyboard shortcut. So we added the shortcut Command-Shift-P, which you're probably familiar with from VS Code if you've used the command palette there, that'll open the symbol palette automatically. You can then type in what you want, navigate the symbol palette entirely using your keyboard, and press Enter to insert something. So just to show you what that looks like, we're going to try and add a primary button. So we press Command-Shift-P, we type in what we want, and it filters out the list in real time. We press Enter, and we drag it right into the document. This is one of the biggest speed-ups we saw in our design teams. It ended up taking probably 10 minutes off the hour for every hour a designer spent designing. Next up is our font stack and text styles. So on the first installation of the Atlassian Vendor Sketch plugin, we'll automatically install all of the fonts you need to work with it, provided you're on a modern Mac. So we'll install Roboto, which we use on our mobile designs. We'll automatically install San Francisco Pro for you. And I think we also install San Francisco Mono. Once you're in, it's really, really easy to go and customize your designs to make them look like they've got typography from Atlassian services. So to show you what that looks like, we're going to go and add a couple of text boxes. The first one we'll add is going to be a small subheading for the page. So something simple, like it's that time of the year again, we're planning our Xmas party. And then secondly, we're going to go and add a larger text box. And I'm going to speed the video up here a little bit so that I don't waste too much of your time. But the point is we just want a little bit of text that might go in a sort of a paragraph setting. So we're going to go and resize that as well so that it looks like a proper paragraph and so the text doesn't overflow too badly. Once that's done, it's super easy to go and make these into text styles that you would see around Atlassian products. So we're going to go and select the heading, move into Sketch's sidebar, And where it's under the appearance menu item, where it says no text style, we can scroll down to ADG typography and select H600, which is a small sort of heading. And we can do the same with the paragraph text to really make that look like the actual paragraph. What's really important about this workflow is that you no longer have to go and repeatedly check the design website to figure out exactly what properties we have. So we set a bunch of things on our fonts, like we set the color, we set line height, we even set things like character spacing between the letters. You don't have to worry about any of that. All you have to do now is just select it in the list, and it'll automatically look like it does on the web. Zero effort required. I'm going to move on now to color styles. We have two main ways of getting colors into your designs, and I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons of each. If you're familiar with Sketch, you can often just use the color panel, and we've added a little bit of something extra to the color panel for you. Let's say, for example, in our design, we want to come up with a list that shows off who is giving a present to who in the Secret Santa so that you can audit it and monitor what's going on. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that we've added a little custom arrow icon into this list, but we want to change the color of it. We want the color to look like an Atlassian color rather than this jarring jet black that it is right now. All we're going to do is go into the color panel up the top right, which you might be familiar with if you've used Sketch before. And where you typically have global and document colors where you can set presets, we've added a new preset called ADG color. This has all of the colors from our design system. And if you click on it, we have all of the names and all of the colors automatically arranged in this list. So we have the primary colors up the top, and we have the different shades and the different variations in our colors down the bottom. So you can make it blue, you can make it green, or you can make it N800, which is the closest thing in the ADG that we have to black. Furthermore, you can also customize this view by clicking on this little grid icon here, and you can get a little bit of a grid color palette if that's what you prefer to work with, and you can hover over the different colors to get their name and to work with them like that. So if we want a slightly lighter gray, we can do that, or we can change it back to black very easily. The second way of working with colors is a little bit more expressive and is probably more valuable if you're thinking of moving into building maybe a custom design system for your product. So this way we use layer styles. So you can select the component like before, and where you would have typically seen like typography styles earlier, you can go and select layer styles, ADG color, and all of our colors are also accessible through this menu. There's two reasons why you'd prefer this. Number one is if we make tweaks to colors in our palette, and sometimes we do, those tweaks will be propagated through the layer styles, but they won't be propagated through the color palette in the previous setting. Secondly, and probably more importantly, if you use layer styles and then you turn this into a component that you want to reuse later, it becomes automatically themable. So let me show you how that works. If we go and select all three of these components, and we turn this thing into a larger symbol by going create symbol, giving it a name, something like list entry, you'll see now in the sidebar that this is automatically themable. So up the top, we have the option to change the arrow color to anything we want, and that doesn't affect other instances of this component. So if you want to make your designs themable very easily, and you can just reset it like that, you should use layer styles instead of the typical color palette. Finally, I'm really excited to talk about data suppliers. So one of the things that you might have noticed if you've done design or development before is that writing the same copy over and over gets really tedious really quickly. And we did some more internal research on this, and we also found that writing the same copy over and over gets really tedious really quickly. Also, writing the same copy over and over gets really tedious really quickly, doesn't it? What's more, having these sort of stale template parts in your designs, it makes them look inauthentic. And so having real data from a real Atlassian instance is the fastest way to make your designs look like they might actually come to life. So we invented a team called Beyond Gravity. They're a space company. Think of them best like WeWork, but in space. So I think they rent out satellites to people or something. Whatever, the point is, they have the full Atlassian suite installed, and we have sample data that you can use for free without any sort of royalty or license from all of their Atlassian instances. Let me show you how this works. In Sketch, if you have a little bit of a design that you want to spice up a bit, for example, our Confluence page, and we want to add some sample headings and body text from a real Confluence page, all you have to do is select the item that you want to change, in this case, a header, go to the data menu in Sketch, go into text, pick the product you're working with, and then pick the thing that you want to change. So in this case, we're going page title, but if you're working with Jira, we've got things like issue keys, we've got space avatars, we've got the whole lot. Once you select that, it'll go and create a random page title from a real Confluence instance. And you can do the same with the body text. Furthermore, as we've sort of already established, having this sort of blank template data looks kind of boring, right? But if you fill that in individually one by one, you can get weird mismatches like this. Bob Johnson is not Jane Rutanson, and neither of them are probably this guy on the left, right? We found a way to solve that in Sketch, where you can link multiple fields together so that they automatically fill in with real data, so your designs go over smoothly. So in this case, let's say we have a list of these Secret Santa items, and we want to fill those in so that all of the users' data links up appropriately. Notice as well how in Sketch, we can select multiple items at once, and we'll be able to fill in data for all of them at the same time. All we're going to do now is go into Sketch's Inspector, click on this small data icon, and you'll be able to open up the menu to the users, and you'll notice that some of these menu items have a little link emoji next to them. That means that when you select this, and you have to do it from the Overrides panel, when you select it, it'll automatically fill in the data for every field in that design, rather than just the field you've selected. You can activate this from any field that accepts sample data. Once you do this, it's then going to fill in all of the people at once with data that looks like it's them. So you'll notice the usernames match the photos, and they match the names of the users. It's exciting. It is a little bit tricky to get right on the first time, but we've found internally that it's super useful for working with real designs. The other huge benefit of data suppliers is that they can catch internationalization or overflow issues. So in this case, we've realized pretty quickly that the designer probably should have made this component wider or more responsive so that it works correctly. Next up is the users. We've faced big licensing issues, funnily enough, trying to get people to give over their entire likeness to an open source project to be used for whatever they want. So what we did instead is we generated every single one of the people in the Vendor Sketch plugin using a neural network. None of the people you see on the stage actually ever existed, which means you can do with them whatever you want. You can use them in your designs completely royalty-free with no licensing issues. Furthermore, it also means we have a lot of diversity. So you'll see there's a lot of age, race, gender diversity going on in these people, and you can work with them however you'd like. Rowana is going to be talking later about how you can implement more inclusivity in your designs and how you can work with that. Finally, what else is in the Sketch plugin? Whatever you want, because we're making it open source. Everything that we showed you today is built using the Sketch plugin API. That means JavaScript ES Next. That means async await. That means destructuring. That means that I built the symbol palette using React hooks, and I styled it with emotion to make it look native. And the reason why that's important is that the developers in the room who are familiar with front-end web technologies are going to be able to very easily customize it to your team's needs. So think like adding your own data into the data suppliers, think changing out the libraries that we ship with the plugin for your team's personal brand libraries. The possibilities are endless, and we're really excited as well to be able to open it up to you to find issues with it and to contribute back in an open source sort of fashion. Everything that I'm showing you today is available open source at github.com/Atlassian/sketch-plugin. And I'll give you a moment if you want to just take a quick photo or write that down. So finally, how to get your hands on it. We're launching this today. It's available right now. In a couple of days, you'll be able to go to the Atlassian design website and find it through there. For now, the best way to get it, and I'd also recommend taking a photo of this slide, you can go to go.atlassian.com/AVSP, and you can download it immediately for free. In a few days as well, it should be available on the Sketch Plugins market, which is a small little website where you can find all sorts of Sketch plugins. So I think that's about it. I'm very, very excited to be taking questions from the room. I think Natalie will be going around with a